My daughter announced the sale of my dead wife's house before I even knew it was for sale. She raised a glass at my 72nd birthday dinner and told 40 guests that I had finally agreed to give Harbor House to Mariner Crown Development for $14,200,000. The notary smiled. The developer applauded. My son-in-law Preston touched the ivory folder beside my plate like the deal was already done. I was still staring at the cake with Lydia's name written in blue icing when my 10-year-old granddaughter Sophie slid a folded sugar packet into my palm and whispered, "Grandpa, do not eat the almond slice. Mom says the drops make your hands soft before you sign." Before we continue, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments where you are listening from. Your support means more to me than you know. I looked at her, then at the gold pen waiting beside the blue page, then at my daughter smiling as if she had not just turned my birthday into a trap. That was when I realized the candles on that cake were not for me. They were for the funeral of everything my wife had built. Inside the sugar packet, Sophie had written only 6 words. Do not sign the blue page. I did not know yet that Preston needed a $750,000 deposit to clear by midnight, or that a Boston lender was waiting for his $300,000 repayment, or that a doctor had already been paid $50,000 to make me look confused by morning. I only knew one thing. Someone had taught my granddaughter to fear cake, paper, and her own mother. Before this story is over, I am going to tell you how my daughter tried to steal my dead wife's house, how a developer hid behind birthday speeches and family prayers, how a doctor tried to sell my mind on paper, and how one frightened child gave me the warning that turned a $14,200,000 sale into the sweetest public ruin our town had ever seen. My name is Edward Callahan. Most people in Cape Mercy call me Eddie, even though I am too old for it now. I am 72 years old. I owned Harbor House for 46 of those years. It sits on a stone bluff over the Atlantic, white shingles, blue shutters, wraparound porch, 9 guest rooms, and a widow's walk that has survived 3 hurricanes, 2 bankrupt cousins, and 1 lightning strike that left a black scar down the east chimney. My wife Lydia used to say the house was stubborn because it had been raised by salt air and women who refused to move. She loved that place more than any building probably deserved. We bought it when we were 26 and stupid enough to think love was a business plan. The roof leaked. The furnace coughed. The dining room floor tilted so badly that soup collected on one side of the bowl if you sat near the piano. But Lydia walked through those rooms the first time with one hand on her belly because she was pregnant with Annabelle, and she said, "This house knows how to hold people." That was all it took. We borrowed too much money, worked too many hours, and turned the olden into the center of our life. For years it was simple. Guests came in summer. Fishermen came in November. Writers came in the off-season to stare at the sea and pretend they were suffering in a more interesting way than everyone else. Lydia cooked breakfasts that made people write letters years later. I fixed pipes, carried bags, argued with boilers, and learned that every old house has a private language made of clicks, drafts, groans, and warnings. Annabelle grew up under those stairs. She hid in laundry carts. She learned to count cash in the front office before she learned long division. She used to stand at the porch rail and wave at every guest who left like she was sending ships to war. Lydia said our daughter had a hostess heart. I believed her. Fathers believe the kindest version of their children for too long. That is one of our most expensive habits. Lydia died 4 years before that birthday dinner. Stroke. Fast enough to feel like theft. 1 minute she was standing at the kitchen sink rinsing blueberries for muffins. The next she was on the floor with one hand curled under her chest and her eyes fixed on me like she was trying to apologize for leaving without packing. She lived 3 days in the hospital. Long enough for doctors to say hopeful things in careful voices. Not long enough to come home. After she died, the house changed. Not in any way a stranger would notice. The shutters were still blue. The porch still creaked in the same 6 places. The coffee still smelled strong at 6 every morning. But the rooms had lost their answer. A house can be full and still feel abandoned if the right person is gone. I kept Harbor House open because Lydia had made me promise. Not as a hotel forever. As a trust. That was the part most people never understood. 2 years before she died, Lydia started the Harbor Promise, a summer program for families with sick children and exhausted caregivers. 1 week a year, then 2 weeks, then 4. No charge. Rooms, meals, beach chairs, quiet, privacy, dignity. She said hospitals steal ordinary life from families, and for 1 week Harbor House could give some of it back. When the program began, Annabelle cried during the first dinner because a little boy with leukemia asked if he could take extra pancakes to his room for later. I remember thinking, my daughter understands. I remember being proud. I remember being wrong. Lydia's will left Harbor House in my control for life, but after my death, the property was to move into an irrevocable charitable trust. Annabelle would receive money from our investments and a seat on the board, but she would not be able to sell the house. That was deliberate. Lydia knew the coastline was changing. Developers had been circling Cape Mercy for years, buying old cottages and turning them into glass boxes with names like the Breakers and Stonewater Villas, as if slapping soft words on concrete made it less ugly. Harbor House sat on 22 acres of bluff, meadow, and private beach access. To a family, it was a legacy. To a developer, it was meat. The first offer came 9 months after Lydia's funeral. $8 million. I laughed. The second came 6 months later. $10,500,000. I said no. The third arrived through a company called Mariner Crown Development. $14,200,000, with a resort plan that included private villas, a spa, a wedding lawn, and something called a coastal wellness experience. I threw the packet into the fireplace without reading past page 3. Lydia had not spent her final years building a refuge so strangers could drink cucumber water where children once learned to breathe again. Annabelle said I was being emotional. That was new. Or maybe it was not new and I had only started hearing it. She had moved back to Cape Mercy after Lydia died, saying I should not manage the inn alone. Her husband Preston came with her. Preston Vale was handsome in the way some men are handsome because every part of them has been arranged for effect. Dark hair. White teeth. Soft hands. A voice that always sounded 3 inches away from a sales pitch. He had worked in real estate finance in Boston, which meant he could say predatory things using words like opportunity and liquidity. I did not like him. Lydia had not liked him either, though she never said it directly. She once watched him explain to a waitress that the tip was lower because the service had been almost excellent, then turned to me in the car and said, "Some men count generosity like it is leaving their body in blood." That was Lydia's way. 1 sentence, clean cut, no waste. After she died, Preston began appearing in rooms where he had not been invited. Board meetings. Vendor calls. Breakfast planning. Maintenance estimates. He talked about the house like a sick relative who needed a hard decision. Deferred maintenance. Insurance risk. Coastal erosion. Labor shortage. Rising taxes. Every phrase true enough to be useful. That is how people like Preston work. They do not begin with complete lies. They begin with facts arranged toward a betrayal. Annabelle changed beside him. Not all at once. That would have been easier to notice. She changed in small adjustments. She stopped saying Mom would have wanted and started saying Mom would have understood. She stopped asking what the Harbor Promise needed and started asking what it cost. She stopped bringing Sophie to the kitchen on Saturday mornings because she said the inn made the child too attached to old grief. Then she started mentioning my age. Not cruelly. Never cruelly at first. That is another warning sign. The first cuts are always polite. Dad, you forgot the linen order. Dad, you told that story twice. Dad, are you sure you sent the check? Dad, maybe let Preston handle the insurance call. Dad, you look tired. By the time people say those things often enough, others begin hearing a pattern even if there is not one. By the time my birthday dinner came, Preston had spent nearly a year building that pattern around me. I knew some of it. I did not know enough. That night, the dining room was dressed like a postcard. Lydia's blue china. White candles. Hydrangeas in old milk glass vases. The piano lid polished. 40 guests, family, board members, neighbors, donors, 2 town officials, and Grant Bell, the regional director for Mariner Crown Development, sitting beside my daughter like a man who had bought a ticket to a private victory. I did not know then that he had already wired a secret deposit. I did not know the notary was there for me. I did not know the almond cake had been touched before it came to the table. I only knew Sophie looked scared. She sat between Annabelle and Preston, small in a navy dress, her braids tied with white ribbon. She had been quiet all evening. Too quiet. Sophie was not a loud child, but she had Lydia's habit of asking questions that made adults rearrange their faces. That night she kept watching the kitchen door. When the cake came out, everyone clapped. It was beautiful. 3 layers, almond cream, sugared blueberries, and blue icing along the edge because Lydia always said blue belonged in every celebration near water. Annabelle stood with her glass raised. Before Dad cuts the cake, she said, we have something very special to announce. I looked at her. She smiled back, bright and steady. After months of private conversation, Dad has decided it is time to let Harbor House begin a new chapter. The room warmed with confusion before it broke into applause. That is what people do when they are not sure whether something is good news but are afraid silence might be rude. Grant Bell smiled. Preston touched the ivory folder. And Sophie slid the sugar packet into my hand under the table. Don't eat the almond slice. Do not sign the blue page. I looked from the message to my granddaughter. She did not look at me. She kept her eyes on her plate like a child praying not to be seen praying. Annabelle continued. Mariner Crown has made an extraordinary offer. Dad understands that preserving Mom's heart sometimes means allowing her dream to evolve. That sentence nearly made me stand. Preserving Lydia's heart by bulldozing her house. Evolve. Another soft word hiding teeth. Preston rose beside her. Edward has shown incredible courage, he said. He knows the property has become too much for one man. We are proud of him for choosing family stability and long-term impact. Family stability. Long-term impact. 2 more polished little knives. I could feel 40 people turning toward me. Some smiling. Some puzzled. Some already accepting the version of events being served with wine. My hand closed around the sugar packet. I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I denied everything in that room, I would sound exactly like the confused old man Preston had been teaching them to expect. So I smiled. It nearly killed me. But I smiled. I lifted my glass and said, well, that is quite a birthday surprise. People laughed softly. Annabelle relaxed by half an inch. Preston relaxed more. That told me plenty. They needed me calm. They needed me agreeable. They needed the room to believe I was part of the script. So I gave them calm. The cake was placed in front of me. A thick almond slice with Lydia's blue icing on the edge. The smell hit me first. Sweet almond. Butter. Vanilla. And something underneath it. Not strong. Not obvious. A bitter medicinal breath hidden under sugar. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I did not. I set my fork down and pressed one hand lightly against my chest. Forgive me, I said. I think dinner was enough for tonight. Annabelle's eyes flicked to Preston. There it was again. One tiny movement. One piece of truth. Preston smiled too quickly. Just a bite for the photo, Edward. Later, I said. Dad, Annabelle said softly, you always loved almond cake. I looked at her and wondered which version of my daughter had said that. The child who once licked batter from Lydia's spoon. Or the woman who had let someone put drops into her father's dessert. I still do, I said. That is why I want to enjoy it when I can taste it. Another polite laugh around the table. The moment moved on. But Sophie did not relax. After dinner, Preston brought the ivory folder to my end of the table. Grant Bell appeared beside him, smiling with professional warmth. The notary smoothed her jacket. Annabelle placed one hand on my shoulder. Every gesture gentle. Every body in position. Just a ceremonial intent page tonight, Preston said. Nothing final. It helps Grant show the board there is family unity. Family unity. I looked at the folder. Inside, on top, was a page with blue tabs. Sophie had been exact. Do not sign the blue page. I reached for the pen. Annabelle inhaled. Preston watched my hand. Grant Bell's smile sharpened. Then I let the pen slip from my fingers. It hit the floor and rolled under the table. Old hands, I said, making my voice light. Several people smiled with pity. Good. Let them think pity. Pity is a door people open when they should be guarding it. As everyone shifted and the notary bent to retrieve the pen, I slid the top page sideways just enough to see the line beneath the title. Not ceremonial. Not intent. Authorization to execute asset sale. My blood went cold. Preston retrieved the pen and set it in my hand again. No rush, he said, though his jaw had tightened. Actually, I said, looking at the room, there is one thing Lydia taught me about documents. Never sign anything after wine and applause. That got a real laugh. Even Grant Bell laughed. Preston did not. Annabelle's hand tightened on my shoulder. Tomorrow then, she said. Tomorrow, I agreed. That one word bought me 12 hours. I did not know yet whether 12 hours would be enough to save Harbor House, my granddaughter, and what remained of my family. But it was enough to start. I waited until the last guest left. I hugged people. I thanked people. I let 3 donors tell me how brave I was. I let Grant Bell clasp both my hands and say he looked forward to honoring Lydia's legacy. I wanted to break his nose against the mantle. Instead I said, legacy matters. He missed the warning. Predators often do when they are close to eating. At 10:30, the dining room emptied. The staff cleared plates. Rain began tapping the windows. Annabelle took Sophie upstairs. Preston walked Grant Bell to his car. I went to the kitchen. Maria Soto, who had run my kitchen for 18 years, stood at the sink rinsing cake plates with her mouth pressed into a thin line. Maria had loved Lydia. Not politely. Truly. They had fought like sisters and protected each other like soldiers. She looked at me once and said, "You did not eat the cake." No. Good. That one word stopped me. Maria. She turned off the faucet. For the first time that night, her hands shook. I did not put anything in it, she said. I swear on my mother. I made the cake myself. It was clean when I covered it at 4. When did it stop being clean? Her eyes moved toward the pantry door. At 6, Mr. Vale came in with Mrs. Annabelle. He said they wanted to add a private birthday candle, something for the family. I told him kitchen staff handles food only. He laughed. Said I was dramatic. Then he asked me to check the wine delivery. When I came back, the cake cover was crooked. I felt the floor shift under me. Did you see anything? No. But Sophie did. The name landed between us. She was in the back hallway, Maria said. She looked scared. I asked if she was all right. She said she was not supposed to be there. I closed my eyes. My granddaughter had seen enough to risk warning me. Can you save the slice? I asked. Maria already had. She opened the lower refrigerator and pulled out a wrapped plate with my untouched almond cake inside. I also saved the knife, she said. And the serving spatula. And the little dropper I found under the sideboard. For the first time that night, I nearly cried. Not from fear. From relief that someone in my house had still been acting like truth mattered. Maria wrapped the items in clean bags. My cousin works at the county lab, she said. Not officially for this, but he knows how to tell if a thing is wrong. No, I said. Not yet. We do it through a lawyer. Chain of custody. The kind they cannot laugh away. Maria nodded. Who? I knew exactly who. Iris Shaw. Elder law attorney. Former prosecutor. Lydia's oldest enemy and best friend, depending on which year you asked. She had handled our wills. She had warned us that Annabelle should never receive control of Harbor House directly. At the time I thought she was being harsh. Now, standing in my kitchen with poison cake in a bag, I understood Iris had been merciful. I called her at 11. She answered on the 5th ring with no greeting. Edward, someone better be dead or confessing. Not dead, I said. But maybe close. I told her enough. Not all. Enough. She was silent for exactly 4 seconds. Then she said, do not confront them. Do not threaten them. Do not sign anything. Do not sleep in that house if you can avoid it. Bring the cake, the dropper, the folder if you can get it, and the child if she speaks again. Sophie is upstairs. Then keep her safe without making them move her. Can you do that? I looked toward the ceiling. My granddaughter slept somewhere above me under the roof Lydia had loved. I have to. No, Edward, Iris said. You have to do it intelligently. There is a difference. That was Iris. Comfort by blunt force. After the call, I went to Lydia's old office. It still smelled faintly of lemon polish and paper. Her desk sat under the window overlooking the black water. For 4 years, I had not touched the bottom drawer. Not because I believed it held anything important. Because grief makes cowards of practical men in strange places. I opened it that night. Inside were old letters, receipts, program brochures, a cracked fountain pen, and a blue notebook labeled Harbor Promise, Future Protections. My hands went still. I sat in her chair and opened it. Lydia's handwriting filled the first page. Edward will trust Annabelle longer than he should. This is not an insult to either of them. It is simply the weather of fathers and daughters. I read that sentence until the ink blurred. On the next pages, Lydia had written concerns. Preston's pressure about liquidity. Annabelle's resentment about the will. Developer inquiries. Possible attempts to argue incapacity. Need independent medical review. Need second trustee emergency clause. Need public donor protections. At the back of the notebook was a sealed envelope addressed to me. The paper had yellowed at the edges. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter and a key. Eddie, if you are reading this because I am gone and someone is trying to make you doubt your own judgment, stop being polite. Politeness has its place. Not when wolves are eating the porch. The small key opens the brass box in the linen closet wall. You always said that hiding important things in a linen closet was dramatic. You were wrong, and I forgive you. Trust Iris. Trust Maria. Trust records more than speeches. And if Annabelle is part of this, do not save her from the truth. Truth is the only medicine left when love has been misused. I love you. Lydia. I pressed the letter to my chest and made the kind of sound I would have been embarrassed to make if anyone living had heard me. Then I went to the linen closet. Behind the second shelf, beneath a loose square of paneling, was the brass box. The key fit. Inside were copies of trust documents, old developer letters, a video drive, and a sealed medical directive naming Iris as emergency co-trustee if my capacity was challenged under suspicious circumstances. Lydia had built a door for me years before I knew the house was on fire. At midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I closed the box and slipped the drive into my pocket. Annabelle appeared at the office door in a robe, her face pale in the low light. "Dad?" I turned with Lydia's notebook hidden under a stack of brochures. "Couldn't sleep." She studied me. For a moment I saw a child in her face. Then Preston's training returned to her eyes. "You seemed confused tonight," she said softly. There it was. The first note of the song. "Did I? You said tomorrow in front of everyone, but you know Grant has a board deadline. Preston says delays could damage the offer. Preston says many things." She flinched. Just slightly. "Dad, please don't make this harder." "For whom?" Her eyes filled. The tears worked on me because they always had. "For all of us," she said. "Mom is gone. The house is eating money. Sophie needs stability. You need rest. I need to know you are not alone inside this old place pretending the past can feed itself forever." If she had stopped there, maybe I could have believed some part of it. Then she added, "This sale can heal us." No. That was not my daughter talking. That was Preston, wearing her mouth. "Go to bed," I said. She stared at me. "You will sign tomorrow." Not a question. A statement. Then she softened her voice too late. "Won't you?" I smiled gently. Tomorrow is a long way off. For the first time that night, Annabelle looked afraid. Good. Fear makes people hurry. And hurried people leave prints. I did not sleep in my room. I slept in Lydia's office with a chair under the door handle, a blanket over my knees, the brass box under the desk, and the taste of betrayal thick in my mouth. At 4 a.m, the old house clicked in its private language. Pipes. Wind. Rain. The small noises I had known for decades. Then one sound that did not belong. A floorboard outside the office. Slow. Careful. Someone tried the door. The chair held. I did not breathe. Another soft push. Then Preston's voice, almost a whisper. "Edward?" I said nothing. He waited. The handle moved again. Then silence. His footsteps retreated toward the stairs. I sat in the dark until dawn with Lydia's letter in one hand and the knowledge that my son-in-law had tried to enter my room before morning. By 7, I was no longer a hurt father. I was evidence gathering in a cardigan. That is not a heroic sentence. It is a true one. At 8:15, Maria gave me a travel mug of coffee and a paper bag containing the cake sample, the dropper, and the serving tools. "You are driving yourself?" she asked. "Yes. Do not take the coast road." "Why?" She looked at me the way Lydia used to when I asked a question whose answer was obvious. "Because cliffs do not testify." I took the inland road. Iris Shaw's office sat above a florist on Main Street, which always amused Lydia because Iris was the least floral woman alive. She opened the door herself before I knocked. She wore black slacks, a gray sweater, and the expression of a woman who had already planned 3 lawsuits by breakfast. "You look terrible," she said. "Good morning to you too. If you wanted soft words, you should have called a pastor." "Sit." I handed her everything. The sugar packet. The cake. The dropper. The folder page I had managed to photograph with my phone before Preston collected it. Lydia's letter. The notebook. The brass box documents. Iris read in silence. Not quickly. Correctly. She paused longest over Lydia's letter. When she finished, her eyes were wet. I had known Iris for 30 years and had seen her cry once, at Lydia's graveside, when everyone else had gone. She folded the letter carefully. Your wife was annoyingly right about nearly everything. Yes. She knew this might happen. Yes. And you did not. I know. Good. Shame wastes time if it lasts longer than the lesson. That was her version of mercy. Within an hour, Iris had called 3 people. A toxicologist at a private lab. A forensic document examiner. A retired state investigator named Nolan Briggs, who had once exposed a guardianship fraud ring and now ran a discreet investigations firm from a former bait shop. By noon, the cake and dropper were logged, sealed, and sent for testing. By 1, Nolan sat across from me in Iris's conference room. He was in his late 60s, broad, bald, patient, with hands like a man who could still remove a door if paperwork failed. He listened to the story without changing expression. When I finished, he asked, who benefits first? Mariner Crown. Who benefits personally? Preston. Annabelle. Maybe Grant Bell. Who controls your medical narrative? I hesitated. My doctor is clean. I think. Thinking is not evidence. Who has recently suggested evaluations, forgetfulness, assisted living, medication, or stress? Preston. Annabelle. A geriatric consultant named Dr. Celia Markham came to dinner twice. Iris looked up sharply. Markham? You know her. I know of her. She testifies in capacity disputes. Usually for families who want control fast. Nolan wrote the name down. Good. Now we have the doctor. I don't know that she is involved. He looked at me. You also did not know your cake might be sedated. Let us not worship uncertainty. Fair. The plan began there. First, do not sign. Second, pretend to reconsider. Third, let Preston push. Fourth, document every push. Fifth, find the money. Sixth, find the people who had done this before. Because Nolan said something that stayed with me. People rarely build a con this clean on the first try. They practice on someone with less power. Then they move up. So we started looking backward. Not at Annabelle first. At Preston. His real estate history. His finance clients. His bankrupt limited liability companies. His civil cases that had been settled quietly. Grant Bell's projects. Celia Markham's testimony. Mariner Crown's acquisitions. Patterns. Patterns are where polished evil gets lazy. I drove back to Harbor House at 3 with a burner phone in my coat pocket, 3 recording devices from Nolan, and instructions from Iris written on a yellow pad. Smile. Ask questions. Agree to meetings. Never drink anything poured outside your sight. Never eat anything plated by them. Keep Sophie close without alarming them. Do not be alone with Preston. That last one sounded dramatic until I remembered the office door at 4 in the morning. When I reached the inn, Preston was waiting on the porch. He wore a navy coat and concern like a costume. Edward, he said, coming down the steps. We were worried. Were you? Annabelle said you left early. I had errands. He smiled. Anything I can help with? No. One syllable can do amazing work if people are used to your explanations. His smile held, but his eyes changed. Grant is coming by at 5. We should clear up the paperwork. Of course. Good. You had us nervous last night. Why? He laughed gently. Because you were joking about not signing after wine and applause. Very funny. But we do need to show unity. Unity matters. Exactly. He clapped my shoulder. I kept still. That was the hardest part. Not the anger. Stillness. At 4, I found Sophie in the library. She was sitting on the rug with a book open in front of her, not reading. A blue marker lay beside her. When I entered, she looked up so fast my heart hurt. Grandpa. Hey, Bug. I had called her that since she was 2, when she followed Lydia through the garden collecting ladybugs in a paper cup. Her eyes filled immediately. Are you mad? At you? Never. She looked toward the door. I closed it halfway, not fully. Children who live around secrets notice closed doors. I sat on the floor because old bones deserve no respect when a child is afraid. You helped me last night. She nodded once. Did you see something? Her mouth trembled. Mom said I made it worse. The room sharpened. Made what worse? She looked down at the book. She said if you don't sign, they might send you somewhere sad. I kept my voice even. Who said that? Preston. He said old people get confused and then other people have to make kind choices. Kind choices. I wanted to go upstairs and drag him down by his expensive collar. Instead I said, did he say anything about the cake? Sophie's eyes closed. A tear fell onto the page. He had a little bottle. Mom said it was just to help you relax because birthdays make you sad. But Grandma Lydia never put medicine in cake. There it was. Not proof for court, maybe. But enough to split my heart open. No, I said. She did not. Sophie whispered, I wasn't supposed to tell. You did the right thing. Will Mom hate me? That question, from a 10-year-old child in a room full of books, did more damage than any document could have. Because children should worry about spelling tests, not whether truth will cost them a mother's love. Your mother is making bad choices, I said carefully. That does not make truth bad. She looked at me. Are you going away? No. Promise? I had learned by then that promises made to frighten children are sacred and dangerous. I promise I am going to fight to stay right here. That was as much truth as I could safely give her. At 5, Grant Bell arrived with Annabelle, Preston, and a woman I had not expected. Dr. Celia Markham. She wore cream, carried a leather folio, and smiled as if she had been trained in a room without children or weather. We met in the sunroom. The sea was gray beyond the glass. A recorder the size of a button sat under the cushion beside my chair. Another was in my sweater pocket. Nolan had said redundancy is what separates evidence from regret. Preston opened with warmth. Edward, we all want the same thing. That sentence is almost always a lie. I looked at each of them. Do we? Annabelle sighed. Dad. Grant leaned forward. Mr. Callahan, Mariner Crown respects what you and your late wife built. We are not here to erase Harbor House. We are here to expand its reach. With villas. He smiled. With sustainable revenue. And the Harbor Promise families. We would preserve a charitable component. How many weeks a year? His smile paused. That can be discussed. Lydia gave them 16 weeks. 16 may not be operationally realistic under the new model. There it was. The first true sentence he had said. Preston cut in. Dad, this is exactly why we need professionals. You get caught in emotional details. Dr. Markham placed a hand on her folio. Emotional fixation is common after prolonged bereavement. It does not mean your feelings are invalid, Edward. It simply means decisions of this scale should be supported. Supported. Another soft word. By whom? I asked. She smiled. A small team. Family, counsel, medical guidance. Medical guidance to sell real estate. Medical guidance to ensure the decision is free from cognitive strain. I nodded slowly like a man absorbing wisdom. Inside, I was memorizing every word. Annabelle leaned toward me. Dad, please. We are trying to protect you. From what? Her eyes flicked to Preston. He answered. From being overwhelmed. From making decisions based on grief. From letting this property consume the rest of your life. And if I still say no? Silence. Short. But real. Grant Bell looked toward Preston. Dr. Markham looked at her folio. Annabelle looked down. Preston's voice cooled. Then we discuss formal options. Meaning? Dr. Markham answered. A capacity review. Possibly a temporary decision support structure. Nothing punitive. Nothing punitive. How cleanly cruel people can name a cage. I smiled faintly. I see. Preston softened at once. No one wants that. Sign willingly and all of this stays dignified. Dignified. That was the moment I knew they were not improvising. They had a second path ready. Voluntary sale or forced control. My birthday dinner had been step 1. The capacity trap was step 2. I let my shoulders sink. I need time. Annabelle reached for my hand. We don't have much. You said tomorrow. Grant's board needs assurance by Friday. It was Tuesday. 3 days. Preston added, we can host a formal family legacy event Friday evening. Donors, town officials, the board, the announcement, the signature. It would give you the respect you deserve. The respect I deserved. A public stage for my surrender. A room full of witnesses to make my silence look like consent. I looked at him. Friday then. Annabelle blinked. You'll sign Friday? I let the pause stretch. I will make my decision Friday. Preston decided that was enough. Predators hear what they need when hunger gets loud. After they left the sunroom, I went to the kitchen and called Iris from the pantry. They want Friday, I said. Good, she replied. Good? Yes. People who choose a public stage usually forget the stage can face both directions. That became the plan. We would let them build the event. Let them invite donors. Let them bring Grant Bell. Let them bring Dr. Markham. Let them bring the notary, the folder, the cameras, the speeches, the whole polished machine. Then we would turn the machine around. But first, we needed proof strong enough that when the room shifted, it shifted forever. The lab results came Wednesday morning. Iris called at 9:17. Do you want the good news or the bad news? At my age, Iris, those are usually the same thing. The cake was positive for zolpidem and a low-dose benzodiazepine. Enough to impair coordination and judgment in a man your age, especially with wine. The dropper had residue consistent with the same mixture. I sat down at Lydia's desk. The sea outside looked calm in a way that felt insulting. They drugged me. They attempted to. Yes. A sentence can be expected and still land like a brick. Can we use it? The chain is clean enough to start pressure. The lab will testify if needed. Maria's statement matters. Sophie's statement matters, but we protect her unless absolutely necessary. Good. No, Edward. Not good. Useful. Useful. That was the right word. Good had left the house days ago. At noon, Nolan found the first prior victim. Her name was Harriet Doyle. 74. Widow. Owned a riverfront boarding house 2 counties north. Mariner Crown bought it 3 years earlier after her nephew petitioned for temporary financial control, citing cognitive decline. Dr. Celia Markham had submitted the evaluation. Grant Bell had negotiated the purchase. The nephew received a consulting fee through an limited liability company that closed 6 months later. Harriet Doyle now lived in assisted care outside Bangor and believed she had chosen the sale herself. Nolan sent a photograph of the old boarding house before demolition. White porch. Green roof. Flower boxes. Gone now. In its place stood 8 luxury townhomes with black windows and no memory. I stared at the photo and thought of Lydia. Then I thought of Harriet Doyle sitting somewhere in a beige room, wondering why her life had become smaller so quickly. By Wednesday evening, Nolan had found 2 more cases. Different towns. Same pattern. Aging property owner. Family pressure. Capacity concern. Dr. Markham. Grant Bell. Fast sale. Developer profit. Family member quietly paid. No criminal charges. No public scandal. Just polished theft with paperwork. Preston had not invented the weapon. He had joined a practiced operation. Or been recruited by one. That distinction mattered less and less to me. Wednesday afternoon gave them one more chance to underestimate me. Preston scheduled what he called a wellness appointment. He did not ask. He informed. Dr. Markham would come by Harbor House at 2:30 for a friendly cognitive baseline before Friday. Friendly cognitive baseline. That phrase alone deserved a courtroom. Iris told me to accept. Let her build her own noose with professional language, she said. You enjoy this too much. No, Edward. I enjoy precision. The wicked are usually careless when they think they are being gentle. At 2:25, I sat in the sunroom with tea I had poured myself, untouched cookies Maria had baked under direct supervision, and a small recorder inside the hollow base of Lydia's old reading lamp. Preston stayed near the doorway like a man supervising a delivery. Annabelle hovered behind him. Dr. Markham took the chair across from me. She opened her folio with slow hands. Everything about her was designed to make resistance look unreasonable. Soft voice. Warm expression. Neutral blouse. No sudden movement. The costume of safety. Edward, she said, this is not an examination. Think of it as a conversation. Then why the forms? She smiled. Good conversations deserve good notes. So do crimes, I said. Preston's head lifted. Annabelle made a small sound. Dr. Markham only blinked once. That is an interesting association, she said. I had to admire her in a way. Even insult became data in her hands. She began with simple questions. Date. Season. Current president. County name. The sort of questions that make an old man feel like a schoolboy being tested after everyone has already decided he failed. I answered some correctly. I answered one with a pause. I intentionally asked her to repeat another. Not too much. Just enough. Nolan had coached me. A perfect performance would look staged. A slightly tired but competent man is harder to erase. Then she changed tactics. Tell me about Lydia. There it was. Not memory testing. Emotional provocation. What would you like to know? How often do you feel she is still present in the house? Annabelle looked at Preston. They had discussed this. Of course they had. My wife had been turned into a symptom. I folded my hands. Every day. Dr. Markham's pen moved. In what way? In the recipes. In the trust documents. In the blue shutters. In the way Maria threatens the coffee machine. In my granddaughter's eyes when she decides adults are cowards. In grief, if that is what you are asking. Not in ghosts, if that is what you were hoping. Her pen stopped. Only for a breath. Good. Preston shifted by the door. No one is hoping anything, he said. You are always hoping something, I replied. Dr. Markham moved on. She showed me 3 words and asked me to remember them. Lantern. Orange. Chair. Then she asked me to draw a clock. I drew it correctly, then added a small sailboat in the corner. Why the boat? She asked. Because you looked bored. Annabelle almost laughed. She stopped herself. That hurt me more than if she had stayed cold. The old Annabelle was still in there somewhere, trapped under debt and fear and Preston's voice. Dr. Markham asked about finances. That was when Iris's warning became useful. How do you currently manage Harbor House accounts? Carefully. Do you know the monthly operating cost? Which month? Summer staffing, winter maintenance, or shoulder season? General average. Averages make fools feel informed. Ask the question properly. Preston's face tightened. Dr. Markham kept smiling. Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by the burden of the property? Yes. Her pen moved fast. I continued. I also feel overwhelmed by property taxes, damp basements, and people who call fraud protection. Feeling overwhelmed does not transfer ownership. Silence. The sea pressed against the windows. Dr. Markham closed her folio halfway. Edward, resistance to help can be a sign that a person no longer recognizes risk. And calling theft help can be a sign that the helper wants the deed. Annabelle whispered, Dad, stop. I looked at her. That is exactly what I am trying to do. Dr. Markham stood 15 minutes later with less paperwork filled than she wanted and more recorded admissions than she knew. Before leaving, she put one hand on my arm. I hope you understand, everything being done is meant to preserve your dignity. I looked at her hand until she removed it. Doctor, dignity is not preserved by people who sneak it into a folder and ask you to sign while sedated. For the first time, her face changed completely. It was quick. A flash of alarm. Then smooth again. But Preston saw it. And I saw Preston see it. That mattered. After she left, he cornered me in the hallway near the old clock. What was that? A conversation. You are making this ugly. No, Preston. I am noticing that it is ugly. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell mint on his breath. You think you are in control because people like you here. That can change fast. 1 letter from Markham. 1 petition. 1 affidavit from Annabelle. Then you are not the brave old innkeeper anymore. You are a confused widower being protected from himself. The recorder in my sweater caught every word. I let him finish. Then I said, you should speak louder near old houses. The walls like to remember. He stared at me. For the first time, real suspicion entered his face. Then Annabelle called his name from the stairs. He stepped back and smiled like we had been discussing weather. Friday, he said. Friday, I answered. That night, Nolan took the recording to Iris. She listened to Preston's hallway threat twice. Then she said, good. He is starting to sweat. Sweating men speak in useful verbs. The next morning, the private investigator found the woman who made the whole pattern undeniable. Her name was Margaret Bellamy. She was not connected to Mariner Crown in any public way. That was why she mattered. She had once been Dr. Markham's patient after her husband died. She had owned a farm inland, not coastal, not valuable to developers in the same way. A nephew tried to gain control, citing confusion. Markham wrote the evaluation. The petition failed because Margaret's church friend recorded a family conversation where the nephew admitted he needed the farm sold to cover debts. The case disappeared quietly. No charges. No discipline. But Margaret kept everything. I went with Nolan to see her Thursday morning before the money meeting. She lived in a yellow house beside a field gone wild with winter grass. She was 81, thin as a church candle, with a voice that sounded fragile until you listened to the words. Then you realized fragile was just the wrapping. We sat in her kitchen under a clock shaped like a rooster. She poured coffee strong enough to restart a dead truck. Nolan explained only part of my situation. Margaret looked at me for a long time and said, "They are telling people you are sentimental." Yes. And tired. Yes. And stuck in grief. Yes. She nodded. That is how they make memory look like illness. I felt that sentence enter me and stay. She brought out a cardboard box. Inside were transcripts, letters, court copies, and one small recorder in a plastic bag. My nephew told me he was protecting me, she said. Then he told his wife I was too stubborn to die on schedule. That was less protective. Nolan's eyebrows lifted. You recorded him. I am old, not decorative. I liked her immediately. Margaret had also recorded Dr. Markham. Not a confession exactly. Something more subtle. Markham explaining that family transition sometimes required emotional firmness. Markham saying memory of a spouse could distort property judgment. Markham suggesting controlled authority could prevent an elder from making legacy-damaging choices. Same language. Different house. Same cage design. Margaret tapped the papers with one bony finger. She never says steal. People like that never use the honest verb. Would you testify? Nolan asked. She looked at me. Will it help him keep his wife's house? Yes, I said. Then yes. Before we left, Margaret took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Do not let them make you perform calm for their comfort, she said. Be clear. Calm is optional. On the drive back, Nolan said, that woman scares me. Good. I mean it as praise. So do I. Margaret's box gave Iris another weapon. Pattern evidence. Not perfect. Not enough alone. But in combination with Harriet Doyle, the lab report, the fee agreement, Dr. Markham's letter, and Preston's threat, it made the Friday plan much harder for them to explain away. While Iris sharpened the legal side, Nolan followed the money deeper. The $750,000 escrow deposit was only the visible part. Preston had borrowed against the expected advisory fee before the sale even happened. A private lender in Boston had fronted him $300,000 at brutal interest, secured by the promised fee from Vail Coastal Strategy. If Friday failed, Preston did not merely lose a payday. He faced people who expected repayment and did not file polite reminders. That changed the risk. A desperate man is not automatically violent. But he stops being predictable. Nolan said it plainly. From now until Friday night, do not be alone with him anywhere that has stairs, knives, water, tools, pills, cars, or plausible accident language. That is most places. Correct. So I stayed visible. Maria invented reasons to keep staff near me. Iris sent an associate to pretend to review trust archives in Lydia's office. Nolan's man parked near the service entrance. Sophie stayed with Maria whenever Preston was in the house. Annabelle noticed. She said nothing at first. But Thursday afternoon she found me on the porch and asked, "Why does everyone look like they are waiting for something to happen?" Because they are. Dad. Annabelle. She hugged herself against the wind. Preston says you have been talking to lawyers. Preston says many things. Please stop saying that. Then stop letting him speak for you. Her face twisted. You think it is that easy? No. That surprised her. I stepped closer, not too close. I think it is hard. I think that is why you keep choosing the wrong thing and calling it necessary. Her eyes filled. You don't know what I owe. There. The door opened again. I kept my voice low. Tell me. She looked toward the house. I can't. You can. No, I mean I can't. He watches everything. The accounts. My phone. Email. If I move money, he knows. If I call someone, he asks why. If I say I am afraid, he says I created half the problem and should stop acting like a guest in my own life. The wind blew her hair across her face. For a second she looked 16 again, standing on that same porch after a boy had broken her heart, trying not to cry because she thought tears gave people victory. Did he hurt you? She laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because the question was too small. He doesn't have to. He just reminds me what happens if everything comes out. The loan. The signatures. The emails where I agreed you were declining. The messages where I told him to make it happen before you changed your mind. She covered her mouth. She had said too much. We both knew it. Annabelle, I said. Come to Iris with me right now. She stepped back. Fear flooded her face. No. He is using you. I know. Those two words nearly stopped my heart. She knew. Not everything maybe. But enough. Then help me. She looked through the porch window toward the hall. Preston was inside, phone to his ear, pacing. If I help you, she whispered, he will take Sophie from me. He cannot. You don't know what we signed. That sentence opened a new door. What did you sign? She shook her head, crying now. I don't know. That is the worst part. I signed because he said it was temporary. I signed because he said debt collectors could come after the house, after Sophie, after everything. I signed because he said you would never forgive me if you knew how stupid I had been. The truth landed in layers. My daughter had been complicit. My daughter had been controlled. Neither canceled the other. I stepped toward her. She stepped back again. No, she said. Not yet. Friday. What happens Friday? I don't know. Annabelle. She looked at me with terrible fear. I don't know what he will do if Friday fails. Then she walked inside before I could stop her. That conversation changed our plan again. Not the public exposure. That stayed. But Sophie needed more protection. If Preston had documents tied to custody or debt or some private agreement, he might use the child as leverage once cornered. Iris moved fast. By Thursday evening, she had filed a sealed emergency notice flagging potential coercive control and child pressure. A family court judge she trusted agreed to be on call during the Friday event. Maria packed a small overnight bag for Sophie and hid it in the laundry room. I hated that. A child's socks and toothbrush packed beside cleaning towels because adults had made truth dangerous. At 8 that night, Sophie came to me in the library. She held a stuffed rabbit by one ear. Maria says I might sleep at her sister's tomorrow. Maybe. Because Mom and Preston will be mad. Because adults are going to handle something hard, and you deserve to be somewhere safe. She climbed onto the chair beside me. Is Mom bad? There it was again. Children ask the questions adults build religions and court systems trying to answer. Your mom did bad things, I said. And she has been scared. Both are true. Can scared people still be wrong? Yes. Can they fix it? Only if they tell the truth and stop hurting people. Sophie thought about that. Then she asked, did Grandma ever do bad things? I smiled despite everything. Once she threw an entire pie into the trash because a guest said it needed more cinnamon. Sophie blinked. That's not bad. It was the guest's birthday pie. She giggled. A real giggle. Small, but real. Then she leaned against my arm. I miss when this house was normal. I looked around the library. The old books. The lamps. The sea beyond the window. Me too, bug. But normal was gone. That was the thing I finally understood. You do not save a house by making it what it was before the fire. You save it by making sure the fire cannot start the same way again. Late Thursday night, Lydia's video drive became the final piece. I had avoided watching it. Not because I forgot. Because grief is sometimes less brave than a locked door. Iris insisted. If Lydia left a drive in the emergency box, it matters. So we gathered in Lydia's office. Iris. Nolan. Maria. Me. No Sophie. Never Sophie. I plugged the drive into the old desktop. One file appeared. For Eddie, if they try to sell. My hand froze on the mouse. Maria crossed herself. Iris looked away for half a second. Then I clicked. Lydia appeared on the screen sitting in the sunroom, thinner than I wanted to remember, wearing a blue sweater, hair wrapped in a scarf after one of the hospital weeks when everyone was still pretending recovery had equal odds. Her eyes were tired. Her voice was not. Eddie, she said, if you are watching this, I am either dead or too sick to stop you from being noble in the wrong direction. I laughed and cried at the same time. That is a ridiculous sound. No one mocked me. Lydia continued. Harbor House is not to be sold to Mariner Crown, Bell, or any company that looks like them with a fresh haircut. I am recording this because I have heard enough from Preston and Annabelle to know pressure will come after I am gone. Maybe gentle. Maybe legal. Maybe dressed as concern for you. Do not confuse pressure with wisdom. Iris whispered, damn, Lydia. On screen, my wife leaned closer. Annabelle, if you are watching this one day, hear me. I love you. I love you enough to tell you no. You may feel cheated by the trust. You may think the house took more from you than it gave. Maybe in some ways it did. I am sorry for the ways our dream became your burden. But pain does not make theft holy. If you try to sell this place by breaking your father, you will not be claiming your inheritance. You will be proving why I protected it from you. Maria covered her mouth. I looked down because watching my dead wife parent our living daughter was almost unbearable. The video continued. And Preston, if you are standing nearby pretending to help, let me save you time. I saw you. I saw how you looked at the deed packet from Mariner Crown. I saw how you spoke of land value at my kitchen table while the child from room 6 was sleeping after chemo upstairs. You are not practical. You are hungry. There is a difference. Nolan muttered, I would have hired her. Lydia looked tired then, but she finished. Eddie, if they force the issue publicly, make the truth public too. Do not protect people from the consequences of what they tried to do in front of witnesses. The house holds people. Let it hold them to account. The video ended. No one spoke. The room had changed. Not legally, though Iris immediately copied the file and started muttering about admissibility. It changed spiritually, if I can use that word without sounding like a man selling something. Until that moment, part of me had still wondered if I was using Lydia's name to justify my anger. Now I knew. She had seen the storm before I smelled rain. She had left instructions. Make the truth public too. Friday would not only be my revenge. It would be obedience. I slept 3 hours that night. At dawn, I rewrote my speech. Not longer. Sharper. I added Lydia's video. I added Annabelle's choice. I added one sentence Iris tried to remove and then allowed because she said even judges occasionally benefit from moral clarity. The sentence was this. A house is not stolen only when the deed changes hands. Sometimes it is stolen first by teaching everyone in it to doubt the person protecting it. That sentence stayed. That night, Annabelle came to my room. Not Lydia's office this time. My bedroom. She found me standing by the dresser looking at an old photo of her mother on the beach, hair blown across her face, laughing at something I no longer remembered. "Dad," she said. Her voice was soft. No Preston. No audience. Just my daughter in the doorway. "Can we talk?" I set the photo down. Of course. She sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, she looked tired enough to be real. "Do you hate me?" The question almost undid me. Because hate would have been simpler. Hate is clean compared with loving someone who has helped hurt you. No. She closed her eyes. "You should." I stayed still. One wrong movement and she would retreat. "Why do you say that?" She opened her eyes. "Because I know you think I am selling Mom." "Are you?" She flinched like I had slapped her. "I am trying to survive." There it was. The word underneath the sale. Survive. Survive what? She looked toward the hall. "You don't understand what it has been like." "Then tell me." For a moment, I thought she might. I saw it rising in her. Debt. Fear. Preston. Something. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. The change was immediate. Her shoulders tightened. Her face closed. "Friday has to go smoothly," she said. "Not confession. Script. Does it?" "Yes." "And if it doesn't?" Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears had panic under them. "Then everything gets ugly." "Everything is already ugly, Annabelle." She stood. "You don't know that." "No," I said. "I think I finally do." She left without answering. I watched the door close and made a decision that hurt more than any legal strategy. I would give Annabelle one final chance. Not in private. Private had failed. Private let Preston answer for her. I would give her a chance in the room where she planned to bury me. And if she chose to lie there, then truth would take her too. Thursday morning brought the money. Nolan and Iris met me in the old boathouse because the inn had too many ears. The boathouse smelled of rope, salt, and wet cedar. Lydia used to keep beach chairs there, labeled by color because she believed chaos could be defeated with masking tape. Nolan spread printed records across an overturned kayak. "Preston has debt," he said. "How much?" "Documented, $620,000. Probable, closer to $900,000. Margin loans, failed condo investment, private bridge financing, sports betting through offshore accounts." I closed my eyes. Annabelle had said survive. Now I knew part of what she meant. "And Annabelle?" Iris answered. "She co-signed one private loan. She may not understand the full amount. She does understand enough to know a sale solves her immediate problem." "How much would Preston receive?" Nolan pointed to a wire chart. Mariner Crown agreed to pay a transaction advisory fee to a Vail-controlled limited liability company. $500,000 upon signed authorization. Another $1,100,000 at closing. So my son-in-law sells my wife's trust and gets rich privately. Yes. Grant Bell. Likely knows. Harder to prove directly. But the same fee structure appeared in the Harriet Doyle case. Iris tapped another document. Here is the important part. Mariner Crown wired a refundable deposit into escrow after your birthday dinner. The condition was proof of family consent by Friday. How much? $750,000. I stared at her. Refundable. Usually. But Lydia's donor protection clause gives us a path. If they attempted to induce sale through fraud, coercion, or impairment, we can seek injunctive hold and damages. Grant Bell's lawyers will fight. But if he is in the room when evidence is shown, his company will want to settle fast and quietly. And the money? Iris smiled for the first time in days. It was not warm. It was legal. We asked the court to direct settlement funds to the Harbor Promise. Public pressure will do half the work. There it was. Not revenge as shouting. Revenge as structure. They wanted to turn Lydia's house into money. We would turn their money into Lydia's house. By noon, the Friday event had a name. A legacy evening for Harbor House. Preston chose it. Of course he did. There would be donors, town officials, a photographer, a videographer, a representative from the County Arts Council, several members of the Harbor Promise Board, Grant Bell, Dr. Markham, the notary, and half the people whose good opinion Annabelle still cared about. The perfect room for pressure. The perfect room for truth. I spent Thursday afternoon being agreeable. It was disgusting work. I approved flower arrangements. I let Preston show me the speaking order. I agreed that the signature table should sit in front of the fireplace beneath Lydia's portrait. That nearly broke me. The idea of signing away her house under her painted eyes was so grotesque I had to excuse myself to the pantry and grip a shelf until my breathing steadied. Maria found me there. You all right? No. Good. I worry when men say yes too fast. She handed me a glass of water and watched me drink from the tap myself. Then she said, Sophie asked if she can sleep in my room tonight. My heart kicked. Why? She says her mom and Preston whisper too loud. Let her. Already did. I looked at Maria. You are risking your job. She snorted. Edward, I have worked here 18 years. If your son-in-law fires me, I will haunt him through breakfast reviews. For the first time in days, I laughed. Not much. Enough. That evening, I watched Annabelle rehearse her speech in the dining room. She stood beneath Lydia's portrait with note cards in both hands. Preston sat at a table correcting her language. Not sell, he said. Transition. Annabelle crossed out a word. Not loss, he said. Evolution. Another word gone. Not Mom's house, he said. Mom's legacy. She looked up then. It was her house. Preston smiled. And now it becomes her legacy. I stood in the hallway, unseen, and listened to my daughter's words being replaced one by one. That was when I understood her guilt had not made her innocent. But it had made her reachable. Maybe. The hard thing about truth is that it does not let you flatten people into one role. Annabelle was betraying me. She was also afraid. She had made choices. She had also been cornered. She had protected Preston. She had also sent Sophie into rooms where secrets were too heavy for a child. All of it was true. And Friday would not be gentle enough to separate those truths cleanly. Before dawn Friday, I went to the widow's walk. The stairs were narrow and mean. My knees hated every step. At the top, the world was wind and gray light. The ocean moved below like something ancient deciding whether to forgive the land. I had proposed to Lydia up there with a ring I could not afford and a speech so bad she kissed me just to stop it. I stood in the cold and told her what I was about to do. Not because ghosts need updates. Because widowers do. I am going to let them think they won, I said. Then I am going to burn the lie in front of everyone. The wind answered by slapping my coat against my legs. Lydia would have called that approval. At 9, Iris arrived with 2 attorneys and a court-filed emergency petition ready to submit the moment the event began. At 10, Nolan's team positioned hidden cameras in the dining room, sunroom, and hallway. At 11, a uniformed officer came through the back entrance and met with Maria to plan safe movement for Sophie. At noon, Dr. Markham emailed a preliminary capacity concern letter to Annabelle, copying Preston by mistake. Or maybe not by mistake. The letter said I demonstrated signs of emotionally impaired decision-making, grief fixation, and resistance to protective family support. Iris read it, smiled, and said, "Excellent." She wrote the cage down before we asked. At 2, Sophie came to Lydia's office with a small drawing. It showed Harbor House with blue shutters, a giant sun, and 4 stick figures on the porch. Me. Her. Maria. And Grandma Lydia with angel wings too large for the paper. No Annabelle. No Preston. Children edit truth before adults admit it. "Can you keep this?" she asked. "Always." She looked at the floor. "Is tonight when everyone stops pretending?" The question stole my breath. I sat beside her. "Who told you that?" "Nobody. It feels like that." I put the drawing in Lydia's notebook. "Yes," I said. "Tonight some pretending stops." "Will Mom cry?" "Probably." "Will you?" "Probably." She nodded. Children can handle hard truths better than soft lies if you do not make them carry more than their share. "Maria is going to keep you upstairs when people arrive," I said. "I want to see." "I know. But part of protecting truth is knowing where children should not stand when adults finally face it." She did not like that answer. I did not either. At 5:30, cars began filling the drive. The event was scheduled for 6. Harbor House glowed like a painting. Candles in the windows. Music low in the hall. Flowers everywhere. The fireplace lit beneath Lydia's portrait. The signature table waited in front of it, ivory folder centered, gold pen placed beside a small arrangement of blue hydrangeas. Preston had taste. That somehow made the whole thing worse. He came to me at 5:45 wearing a charcoal suit and satisfaction. "Big night," he said. "Yes. I know this has been emotional. But after tonight, things get easier." "For whom?" He laughed softly. "For all of us. Always all of us. The favorite hiding place of selfish people." Annabelle arrived in a dark blue dress that had belonged to Lydia. I had not seen it since my wife's funeral reception. For 1 second, anger blinded me. Then I saw Annabelle's face. She knew what wearing it meant. Maybe Preston had suggested it. Maybe she had chosen it to convince herself her mother approved. Either way, grief had become costume. She touched the sleeve nervously. "Do I look okay?" There it was. The child again. The daughter I had once carried upstairs after she fell asleep under the Christmas tree. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say take off your mother's dress before you lie beneath her portrait. Instead I said, you look like someone about to make a choice. Her eyes searched mine. What does that mean? You will know soon. Preston appeared behind her. The moment vanished. At 6, the room filled. Donors, neighbors, board members, town officials, staff pretending not to watch, 2 plainclothes investigators pretending to admire the molding, Iris near the back in a black suit, Nolan by the hall with a glass of water he never drank. Grant Bell stood near the fireplace shaking hands like he already owned the view. Dr. Markham spoke quietly with the notary. Maria was upstairs with Sophie. I hoped. The evening began with Annabelle's speech. She stood under Lydia's portrait and welcomed everyone to what she called a moment of courage. Her voice trembled twice. Preston noticed both times. I did too. She spoke about family. She spoke about legacy. She spoke about how houses must change so love can continue. Some people nodded. Some wiped their eyes. No one booed because polite people are easy to lead into ugly rooms if the lighting is warm enough. Then Preston took over. His speech was better. That was the problem. He thanked me for my strength. He thanked Lydia for her vision. He thanked Mariner Crown for respecting history. He said Harbor House would not be erased but elevated. He used the word elevated 3 times. By the third, I wanted to throw the gold pen into the fire. Grant Bell spoke next. He promised preservation. He promised community partnership. He promised charitable continuity. He promised everything except the one thing Lydia cared about. That sick families would still come first. Then it was my turn. Preston introduced me as the man of the hour. People applauded. I walked to the fireplace slowly, because age can be useful when people underestimate it. I stood beside the signature table under Lydia's portrait. The ivory folder waited. The gold pen gleamed. The room quieted. I looked at Annabelle. Then Preston. Then Grant Bell. Then Dr. Markham. Then the people who had loved my wife enough to show up and not enough yet to see through the performance. Before I sign anything, I said, I want to tell you what Harbor House is. Preston smiled. He thought this was sentiment. Good. Harbor House is not shingles and old plumbing. It is not a view. It is not 22 acres of premium coastal land. It is not an asset with development potential. Grant Bell's smile stiffened. Harbor House is the place where my wife-fed people who had forgotten hunger could feel safe. It is where children came between treatments and learned that a week could contain more than fear. It is where families slept without listening for monitors. It is where my granddaughter learned that a house can protect people when the adults inside it tell the truth. Annabelle looked down. Preston did not. Last Tuesday, I continued, at my birthday dinner, my daughter announced I had agreed to sell this house for $14,200,000. I had not agreed. The room shifted. Preston's smile dropped. Annabelle's head snapped up. Grant Bell went still. Iris moved 1 step closer to the center aisle. After that announcement, I was asked to eat almond cake and sign a blue page. I did neither. Dr. Markham whispered something to the notary. I looked at her. Doctor, please stay. Your part is coming. A murmur moved through the room. Preston stepped forward. Edward, this is not the right moment. It is the exact moment. My voice surprised even me. Calm. Clear. Not loud. Lydia would have liked it. Preston lowered his voice. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I said. I am embarrassing the correct people. I nodded to Nolan. The television screen near the piano came on. Preston had installed it for the event slideshow. We used it for evidence. The first image appeared. The authorization page with blue tabs. The line visible. Authorization to execute asset sale. Not ceremonial. Not intent. A legal transfer. Gasps. One board member stood halfway and sat again. This is the page I was asked to sign after wine, speeches, and a cake I had been warned not to eat. The second image appeared. Lab report. Zolpidem. Benzodiazepine. Residue on the dropper. Maria's sealed statement. The dining room erupted. Annabelle covered her mouth. Preston's face went flat. Not shocked. Calculating. That told me everything. The cake served to me that night contained sedatives, I said. Enough to impair judgment in a man my age. A dropper with matching residue was found in this dining room. Preston stepped forward again. This is insane. He is confused. Dr. Markham, please explain what we discussed. Dr. Markham made the mistake of speaking. Mr. Callahan has been under considerable emotional strain. His interpretation of events may be affected by grief fixation and resistance to protective support. I smiled. Thank you. The next slide appeared. Her preliminary capacity concern letter. Sent before any independent examination. Language highlighted. Emotionally impaired decision-making. Resistance to protective family support. Temporary decision structure. I turned to the room. Dr. Markham prepared language questioning my capacity before examining me. She is also connected to at least 3 prior property sales involving Mariner Crown development, each involving older owners, family pressure, and rapid transfer after capacity concerns were raised. Harriet Doyle's photo appeared. Then her boarding house. Then the luxury townhomes now on the site. Another woman. Another property. Another file. By the third example, the room had stopped murmuring. It had gone quiet in the way rooms go quiet when people begin understanding they are not witnessing an argument. They are witnessing a pattern. Grant Bell moved toward the side door. Nolan stepped casually into his path. "Leaving already, Mr. Bell?" I asked. Every head turned. Grant smiled weakly. "I need to call counsel." "I'm sure you do." I clicked the small remote in my hand. The next slide showed the $750,000 escrow deposit. Then the advisory fee agreement. Vail Coastal Strategy Limited Liability Company. $500,000 upon signed authorization. $1,100,000 at closing. Preston's company. The room finally broke. Voices rose. A donor shouted, "What the hell is this?" A town councilwoman said, "Is this real?" Iris answered from the back. "Yes. Every document shown tonight has been preserved for court filing." Preston lunged for the remote. I had expected that. Nolan caught his wrist before he reached me. Not violently. Efficiently. Preston hissed, "You stupid old man." The microphone on the table caught it perfectly. The room heard. Sometimes justice is a small technical detail. Annabelle stared at her husband. "Preston," she whispered. He ignored her. "You think this saves the house?" he snapped at me. "You think you can run it forever? You are 72. You forget things. You need us." "Maybe," I said. "But I do not need thieves." Then I looked at my daughter. This was the last chance I had promised myself I would give her. "Annabelle, this is where you choose. In front of your mother's portrait. In front of the people you brought here. Did you know Preston had a private fee agreement?" She shook her head slowly. Her face had lost all color. "No." Preston laughed. "Don't be dramatic." I asked again. "Did you know about the sedatives in the cake?" Her lips parted. No words came. Preston turned on her. "Careful." That one word did what all my evidence had not. It made her see the leash. Annabelle looked at him. Really looked. Then she looked at me. "I knew he had something to help you relax," she whispered. I told myself it was not a drug. I told myself it was like sleep medicine. I told myself if you signed, everything would stop falling apart. The room held its breath. What was falling apart? I asked. Her voice broke. Debt. His debt. Our debt. He said we would lose the house anyway. He said Mom trapped us with a dead woman's fantasy. He said Sophie would grow up watching me drown in your loyalty to a building. Preston snapped, "Annabelle, shut up." She flinched. Then, for the first time in years, my daughter did not obey him. No. One word. Small. Shaking. But hers. She turned to the room. I knew about the sale pressure. I knew about the capacity review. I knew Dad had not fully agreed. I did not know about the private fee. I did not know there were other families. I did not know the cake had real sedatives. But I knew enough to stop it, and I didn't. That was the truth. Not full innocence. Not full villainy. Truth. Messy and ugly and finally alive. Preston reached for her arm. A uniformed officer stepped from the hallway and said, "Do not touch her." The room turned again. 2 more officers entered. Dr. Markham took 1 step back and bumped into the notary. Grant Bell said, "I want my attorney." Iris said, "That would be wise." Then the next part happened quickly. Preston Vale was detained on suspicion of fraud, elder exploitation, attempted impairment, and conspiracy. Dr. Celia Markham was detained pending investigation into fraudulent capacity documentation. Grant Bell was not handcuffed that night, but his phone was taken under warrant 2 days later and he resigned within a week. The notary, who had claimed she believed everything was voluntary, gave a statement before midnight. Maria watched from the kitchen doorway with her arms folded. Nolan preserved every recording. Iris filed the emergency petition before the candles burned out. And Annabelle stood under her mother's portrait in Lydia's blue dress, crying so hard no one could pretend elegance remained. I wanted to comfort her. That was the hardest part. After everything, I still wanted to cross the room and hold my daughter. But Sophie came down the stairs before I moved. Maria tried to stop her, but Sophie had inherited too much Callahan stubbornness for one adult to manage. She stood at the edge of the dining room in her pajamas, looking at the police, the guests, the screen, the open folder, her mother crying. "Mom," she said. Annabelle turned. The sound she made then was not performance. It was a mother realizing her child had walked into the wreckage she helped create. She moved toward Sophie. Sophie stepped back. Only 1 step. But everyone saw it. Annabelle stopped as if struck. "Baby," she whispered. Sophie looked at me. "Is Grandpa going away?" The room went silent again. I crouched despite my knees. "No, Bug. I am not going away." She nodded once. Then she looked at Annabelle. "Did you put medicine in his cake?" No lawyer could have asked it better. No judge could have made it hurt more. Annabelle covered her mouth. "I let Preston do something terrible," she said. "And I should have stopped him." Sophie stared at her. Grandma Lydia would have stopped him. That sentence ended whatever remained of my daughter's defenses. She folded to her knees on the dining room floor and sobbed. I did not go to her yet. I went to Sophie. Because children come first when adults finally collapse. The next 48 hours were a blur of statements, phone calls, court filings, headlines, and bad coffee. The night did not end when the police cars left. That is another lie stories often tell. They make the big reveal feel like a finish line. In real life, the reveal is the moment the floor gives way and you discover how many rooms were underneath. At 11:30, Harbor House looked like a celebration after a storm. Candles burned low. Flowers leaned in their vases. Coffee cups sat abandoned on window ledges. The ivory folder lay open inside an evidence bag. Lydia's portrait still hung above the fireplace, watching everything with that calm expression that had made me feel both loved and corrected for 46 years. I sat at the dining room table while Detective Harris, the officer Nolan had brought in through proper channels, took my statement. I answered clearly. Slowly. I gave times. Names. Documents. Where the cake had been stored. Where Sophie had sat. Who touched the folder. What Preston said in the hallway. What Dr. Markham wrote before examining me. The officer kept looking at me with a kind of careful respect that made me sad. Not because I wanted disrespect. Because I understood that 3 days earlier, if Preston had gotten there first, that same man might have looked at me with careful concern instead. That is how thin the wall can be between victim and problem. Who tells the story first matters. Across the room, Annabelle sat with Iris. Not as client yet. Not as defendant exactly. As a woman who had been standing in the wrong fire and finally stopped denying heat. She had taken off Lydia's blue dress and changed into a plain sweater Maria found in the laundry room. Seeing her out of that dress helped me breathe. The dress belonged to my wife again. Sophie was gone by then. Maria's sister had taken her to a small house 10 minutes inland with a spare bedroom, a night light, and no view of the police cars. Before she left, Sophie hugged me so hard my ribs hurt. She did not hug Annabelle. Annabelle saw it. No judge could sentence her harder in that moment. Near midnight, Iris called me into Lydia's office. Annabelle was there. So was Nolan. On the desk lay 3 documents Annabelle had handed over from a hidden folder on Preston's laptop. The first was labeled Family Transition Strategy. The second was labeled Edward Callahan Capacity Timeline. My initials. Edward Callahan. Edward Callahan. The third was labeled Sophie Placement Options. I stared at that last title until the words blurred. What is this? I asked. Annabelle's voice came out raw. I didn't know about that one. Iris looked at her. You need to be very careful with that sentence. It may be true. It may also be convenient. Annabelle nodded. I understand. That was new. The old Annabelle would have defended herself first. This Annabelle looked too empty to waste energy on pretending. Nolan opened the placement document. It outlined possible boarding schools, temporary guardianship options, and language about insulating the minor child from intergenerational instability during asset transition. I had to sit. Intergenerational instability. They meant me. They meant Lydia. They meant the house. They meant all the love Sophie still had that made her inconvenient. Preston had planned to remove my granddaughter from the house after the sale. Not immediately. He was too careful for that. The memo suggested a phased emotional reset, first with camp, then school, then a recommendation from a child development consultant connected to Dr. Markham. A child development consultant. Another expert. Another soft voice. Another cage made of good words. Annabelle read the first page and began shaking. He told me boarding school was only a backup if the media got ugly, she whispered. The media? I asked. She looked at me with shame. If you resisted. If you made public claims. He said Sophie would need distance from the stress. I closed my eyes. Even before the plan failed, Preston had been ready to call truth stress and remove the child from it. That discovery changed the criminal case. It also changed Annabelle. Not completely. People do not transform in one night because a folder hurts them. But something in her hardened in the right direction. She opened her phone with trembling hands, unlocked her cloud storage, and gave Iris access to a private folder she had kept but never used. Screenshots. Messages. Voice notes. Photos of documents. Small pieces of fear she had saved like a person building a raft without admitting she was drowning. One message from Preston read, if your father will not sign, we use Markham. If he fights Markham, we use Sophie. Stop acting shocked by the plan you begged me to fix. Another read, your mother made this mess by worshipping a building. You owe your daughter a future, not a museum. Another, do not get soft at the event. Once he signs, you can cry all you want. Iris printed them all. Nolan photographed the phone. Annabelle watched like each page was another version of herself being removed from a locked room. At 1:30 in the morning, she said, I want to give a full statement. Iris said, not without counsel. Annabelle looked at me. Will you hate me if I protect myself legally? That question mattered. It meant she was learning the difference between truth and self-destruction. No, I said. Tell the truth with a lawyer beside you. That is not cowardice. She cried again. Less loudly this time. Sometimes there are only so many tears a body can afford in one night. At 2, I walked through the dining room alone. The house was quiet except for the officers moving upstairs and the wind outside. I stopped beneath Lydia's portrait. "We found the Sophie plan," I said to her. "I know that sounds foolish. I do not care. Marriage teaches you to continue conversations no death certificate can close." "You were right about all of it," I whispered. "I am sorry I was late." The next morning, the search of Preston's home office began. It had been my old storage room before Annabelle and Preston moved back. Lydia used to keep holiday linens there, sorted by season and labeled in handwriting so neat it looked like it had been raised properly. Preston had turned it into glass shelves, black furniture, and a desk too large for the room. The police found the obvious things first. Copies of sale documents. Drafts of my signature. Notes from calls with Grant Bell. Markham's invoices. Private loan papers. Then they found the less obvious things. A folder of photographs showing me looking tired, confused, or emotional. Me at Lydia's grave. Me asleep in a porch chair. Me rubbing my forehead during a board meeting. Me holding Sophie's school art and crying at the kitchen table last Christmas. Each image labeled. Mood instability. Public disorientation. Inappropriate emotional response. Possible grief fixation. They had been collecting me. Not memories. A case file. That violation was hard to explain. There are photographs taken with love, and photographs taken as weapons. These were weapons. In another drawer, Nolan found a bottle matching the residue profile from the cake dropper. The label had been scraped off. The prescription number remained under the torn paper. It traced to a patient from Dr. Markham's practice who had died 8 months earlier. That piece made even Iris go quiet. Medicine from a dead patient, kept and used for a living fraud. There are layers of ugliness language does not improve. The final discovery sat in a locked file box. Frankie Bell, one of Nolan's tech people, opened it under police supervision. Inside were letters. Not copies. Original-looking letters. All in Lydia's name. All dated before her death. All saying some version of the same thing. Edward will not be able to let go. Please help him sell if the house becomes too much. Annabelle deserves freedom from our dream. Do not let sentiment ruin the family. I picked up one page with gloved hands. For half a second, grief betrayed me. The handwriting looked close. Not perfect. But close enough to wound before reason arrived. Then I saw the word realize spelled with an American Z. Lydia always spelled it realize with an S because her grandmother had been Canadian and she enjoyed small acts of spelling rebellion. I laughed. Everyone looked at me. I held up the letter. My wife would haunt a person for that Z. It was the first useful laugh of the investigation. The document examiner later confirmed the letters were forged. But in that moment, Lydia had confirmed it herself with one stubborn letter. Preston had planned to use the forged letters if I fought the sale after signing. Evidence that Lydia secretly wanted the house sold. Evidence that my refusal was grief, not principle. Evidence that Annabelle was carrying out her mother's hidden wish. He had prepared not only to steal the house. He had prepared to rewrite my wife. That became the one charge I could never forgive emotionally, even if the law had cleaner names for other crimes. You can steal money and pay some back. You can forge documents and go to prison. But trying to put false words in the mouth of the dead is a special kind of violence. It steals from people who cannot correct the record. So I corrected it loudly. At the first emergency board meeting after the scandal, I played Lydia's video. Not the whole town. Not yet. Only the board, Iris, Maria, Annabelle, and the legal team. Annabelle sat through her mother's message with both hands over her mouth. When Lydia's recorded voice said, "Pain does not make theft holy," Annabelle bent forward as if the words had struck her in the chest. After the video ended, she asked for a copy. Iris said no. Not cruelly. Carefully. You will receive it through counsel when appropriate. Right now it is evidence and it is also your mother's voice. You do not get to use either without protection. Annabelle accepted that. Another small sign. The first court hearing happened the following Tuesday. I had not been inside a courtroom since fighting a vendor dispute over a commercial freezer 12 years earlier. This felt less practical. Preston appeared in a navy suit instead of jail clothes, which annoyed me more than it should have. He looked smaller. Not humble. Never humble. Just reduced by fluorescent light. Dr. Markham sat 2 rows behind him with her attorney. Grant Bell did not attend. His lawyers did. That told me all I needed. Iris argued the emergency trust protection first. She did not dramatize. She did not need to. She laid out the attempted signing, lab findings, capacity letter, hidden fee agreement, prior pattern, and evidence of pressure involving Sophie. The judge interrupted twice. Once to ask whether the cake sample chain was documented. Iris said yes. Once to ask whether the child was safe. Iris said yes, temporarily, but the family court matter remained active. Preston's attorney argued that this was a family dispute inflated by grief and embarrassment. I watched the judge's face when he said embarrassment. Judges are trained to hide reactions. This one almost did. Almost. Then Iris played Preston's hallway recording. 1 letter from Markham. 1 petition. 1 affidavit from Annabelle. Then you are not the brave old innkeeper anymore. You are a confused widower being protected from himself. The courtroom went still. Not dramatic. Worse. Professionally still. The kind of stillness that means a sentence has just destroyed the argument built around it. The judge granted emergency protection of Harbor House and froze all sale-related activity. He also ordered preservation of communications between Mariner Crown, Preston, Dr. Markham, and all related entities. Iris leaned toward me and whispered, "That is legal language for start sweating." 2 days later, Grant Bell's emails began to sweat. One email to Preston said, "We need Edward Callahan framed as willing but emotionally fragile. Markham can support temporary authority if needed. Keep daughter aligned." Another said, "Do not let child become variable. Children talk. Children talk." That line went through me like ice. They had known Sophie was a risk because truth had not been fully beaten out of her. That email alone changed how the town saw Grant Bell. Before, some had treated him as a businessman caught near another man's crime. After that, he became part of the machine. Mariner Crown tried to separate itself from him. It always amazes me how quickly institutions discover rogue actors once emails become public. Before the scandal, Grant was senior leadership. After the scandal, he was an individual whose conduct did not reflect values. Values are very flexible when lawyers bill by the hour. The town meeting happened 10 days after the gala. I did not want to go. Iris said I had to. Public narrative is part of asset protection, she said. You could just say gossip matters. Gossip matters. Wear a clean jacket. The meeting hall was packed. Cape Mercy loves 2 things, storm warnings and other people's business dressed as civic responsibility. People stood along the walls. Reporters waited near the back. Harbor Promise parents filled the left side. Developers and their friends pretended not to sit together on the right. I spoke for 7 minutes. I did not name every crime. I did not attack Annabelle. I did not perform sadness for people hungry to consume it. I said Harbor House would not be sold. I said the Harbor Promise would continue. I said any future development pressure would be public, documented, and fought with every tool Lydia left us. Then I said, if you are here because you want scandal, you came late. The scandal already happened in private. What happens now is repair. That line made the paper. I wish Lydia had heard it. She would have told me not to get impressed with myself. After the meeting, a woman I did not recognize took my hand. She said her husband had stayed at Harbor House during their son's treatment years earlier. She said Lydia had sat with her at 3 in the morning and made toast because fear had made sleep impossible. Your wife gave me one normal hour, she said. I never forgot it. That is what Preston never understood. Value is not always a number someone can wire. Sometimes value is toast at 3 in the morning. Sometimes value is a room where a sick child can hear waves instead of machines. Sometimes value is a house refusing to become someone else's exit plan. By Saturday morning, Cape Mercy knew. By Saturday afternoon, the state knew. By Sunday, national outlets had turned Harbor House into a sentence. Elderly innkeeper exposes $14,200,000 family property scheme. Daughter's birthday dinner trap collapses at legacy event. Sedated cake, forged capacity claims, and coastal development scandal. I hated every headline. Not because they were false. Because they were too small for what had happened. They made it sound like a clever story. It did not feel clever. It felt like waking up in a house where every mirror had been moved. Preston's lawyers tried the first obvious defense. I was confused. Then the lab report became public. They tried the second. The cake contamination could not be traced to him. Then Maria's statement, Sophie's account, and the dropper residue closed that door. They tried the third. The signature page was preliminary. Then Iris released the actual authorization language. They tried the fourth. Preston's fee was a normal consulting agreement. Then Nolan linked it to prior Mariner Crown acquisitions. By Monday, Preston had stopped looking like a misunderstood son-in-law and started looking like what he was. A man who thought family grief was a financing tool. Dr. Markham suspended her practice pending review. Harriet Doyle's niece called Iris in tears. 2 other families came forward. Grant Bell's company issued a statement about ethical standards and internal investigation, which is corporate language for please do not look under the rug until we move the rug. Iris looked under it anyway. The $750,000 deposit became the first battlefield. Mariner Crown wanted it returned. Iris argued fraud attempt, improper inducement, elder exploitation, reputational harm, emergency trust damage, and donor interference. The court froze it pending review. 3 weeks later, Mariner Crown settled without admitting wrongdoing, which is how rich organizations apologize when money is cheaper than truth. The settlement was $1,400,000. Every dollar went into the Harbor Promise. That was the first piece of revenge. Not enough. But clean. Preston had tried to turn Lydia's work into his escape money. Instead his scheme funded 3 years of free stays for sick children and their families. I made sure the donor plaque in the renovated West Wing said only this. Funded by recovered assets. No names. No drama. Just a small brass insult that would outlive him. The second piece came through the trust. With Iris's help, I activated Lydia's emergency protections and expanded them. Harbor House moved into an irrevocable charitable trust while I was still alive. I remained resident steward. Maria received a permanent staff seat. Iris became legal trustee. 2 Harbor Promise parents joined the board. Sophie, when she turns 25, will be eligible for a stewardship seat if she wants it and only if an independent board approves. Annabelle was removed from control. Not erased. Removed. There is a difference. She cannot sell Harbor House. She cannot borrow against it. She cannot use it as collateral. She cannot appoint Preston or any spouse, partner, creditor, or consultant to anything connected with it. Lydia's house now belongs to the promise Lydia made. That was the second piece of revenge. Permanent structure. A door locked from the inside against greed. The third piece was personal. And it hurt the most. Annabelle was charged with conspiracy related to financial exploitation and attempted improper influence. I could have pushed harder. Many people wanted me to. Some still think I should have. They say betrayal by blood deserves no mercy. Maybe they are right in stories where pain is cleaner than life. But I had heard my daughter confess in front of everyone. I had seen the moment she broke from Preston. I had seen Sophie step back from her. Prison would not teach Annabelle anything that her daughter's eyes had not already begun teaching. So I supported a cooperation agreement. Full testimony against Preston, Markham, and anyone tied to the prior schemes. Restitution from her share of investments. No access to Harbor House funds. Mandatory counseling. Community service through a program not connected to us. Supervised parenting review for Sophie. Probation. A public apology to the Harbor Promise families. She accepted. Not gracefully. Not at first. But she accepted. Preston called her weak from jail. The call was recorded. He told her she had ruined them. She answered, "No. You used us. I helped. Now I am done helping." That recording did more for her case than any speech could have. Preston eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts after Grant Bell's internal emails surfaced and Dr. Markham started negotiating to save herself. He received 8 years. Not enough, according to Maria. Probably not enough, according to me on bad nights. But long enough for Sophie to become a teenager without his voice in the hallway. Long enough for Annabelle to learn what life feels like when no one else writes her sentences. Long enough for Harbor House to remain standing. Dr. Markham lost her license and faced charges tied to 2 prior cases. Grant Bell was not sentenced like Preston, but he lost his position, his reputation, and eventually his house in a civil settlement when the other families came for him together. That matters. Predators prefer victims separated. They fear rooms where stories compare notes. Harriet Doyle visited Harbor House 6 months later. She came with her niece and a walker, wearing a purple coat and an expression that said pity would be punished. We sat on the porch and watched the water. She did not cry. She did not ask for comfort. She said, "They made me think I was fading." I was not fading. I was being dimmed. I wrote that down later. Some sentences deserve preservation. Annabelle moved into a small apartment above the pharmacy after the court order required distance from Harbor House during the first stage of probation. Sophie stayed with me for 3 months, then split time under supervision as Annabelle began rebuilding trust. That was complicated. People want endings where the child either forgives or rejects. Real children do neither so cleanly. Sophie missed her mother. Sophie was angry at her mother. Sophie wanted pancakes with her mother. Sophie did not want to eat cake around her mother. All of those feelings lived in the same small body. We made room for them. One morning, Sophie asked if bad choices make a bad person. I told her sometimes yes, sometimes no, but repeated bad choices make a road, and people are responsible for where they keep walking. She thought about that for a long time. Then she said, "Mom walked pretty far." I said, "Yes." She said, "Can she walk back?" I looked out at the sea. Only if she stops asking other people to carry her. Sophie nodded like that made sense. Maybe it did. Kids understand weight better than adults think. As for me, I stayed at Harbor House. Not because I was strong. Because leaving would have made Preston's ghost too satisfied. The first summer after the scandal, the Harbor Promise reopened under the trust. 6 families arrived in June. One little girl named Maisie insisted the widow's walk was haunted by a nice lady who smelled like muffins. Maria said that was nonsense and then cried in the pantry for 4 minutes. I fixed the porch rail. I painted the blue shutters. I learned to let other people carry boxes. That last one was harder than the police interviews. At the reopening dinner, Iris made me speak. I did not want to. She said that was fine, fear did not require my permission. So I stood beneath Lydia's portrait in the same room where everything had broken and told the families the truth I could safely tell. This house was almost taken because I trusted speeches more than patterns. It stayed because a child told the truth, a cook protected evidence, a dead woman prepared better than her husband, and enough people decided that love without accountability is just another hiding place. No one clapped at first. Good. Some truths should not be applauded too quickly. Then Maisie, the little girl who believed in muffin ghosts, raised her hand and asked if the pancakes were still free. Maria shouted from the kitchen, they were never in danger. The room laughed. And for the first time since Lydia died, Harbor House sounded alive without pretending she had never left. Annabelle came to the second summer dinner. Not as board member. Not as hostess. As Sophie's mother, approved for a supervised visit. She wore a plain green dress. No jewelry except her wedding ring, which she had moved to a chain before eventually removing it altogether. She stood at the edge of the porch for a long time before coming inside. I watched her see the children, the families, the restored dining room, the plaque that said funded by recovered assets. Her face changed when she read it. Not anger. Not shame exactly. Recognition. She found me near the coffee urn. Dad, she said. Annabelle. For months, our conversations had been careful and supervised by wounds neither of us could rush. That night she said, I used to think Mom loved this house more than me. I did not answer quickly. Fast comfort would have been disrespectful. Finally I said, she loved you enough not to let you destroy it. Annabelle closed her eyes. Tears slipped out. I know that now. Do you? She looked at the room. I am starting to. That was honest. Starting to is better than pretending to have arrived. Sophie came in then holding 2 plates of blueberry cake. She paused when she saw us together. Annabelle noticed the pause. Pain crossed her face. Then she did something small and right. She stepped back, giving Sophie space to choose. Sophie looked at me. Then at her mother. Then she handed Annabelle 1 plate and said, Maria made this. So it's safe. The sentence hurt. It also healed something. Not all the way. Never all the way. But enough to begin. That is how recovery often enters a family. Not with music. With a child handing cake to a mother and naming the safety out loud. A year after the birthday dinner, Preston wrote me a letter from prison. I almost threw it away. Iris told me to read it because knowing the shape of a man's excuses can be useful if parole ever becomes a question. So I read it. He did not apologize. Not really. He wrote about pressure. About misunderstood intentions. About how I had always looked down on him. About how Harbor House had trapped the family in grief. About how he hoped one day I would see that he had tried to make a rational decision when everyone else was drowning in sentiment. There was one line near the end that made me laugh. He wrote, "You took everything from me." No, Preston. I did not. I simply stopped you from taking what was never yours. There is a difference. I did not write back. Some men deserve silence more than argument. The legal cases took almost 2 years to fully settle. The prior families received portions of civil recovery. Harriet Doyle's case was reopened. Dr. Markham's old evaluations became poison in court. Mariner Crown withdrew from 2 coastal projects and changed its name, which is what companies do when they want the public to forget without becoming better. Nolan sent me updates for a while. Then fewer. Eventually life at Harbor House became larger than the scandal again. That was the greatest victory. Not that people remembered what Preston did. That the house became more than what he tried to do. Still, I did not become naive. Every new board member receives the full history. Every major decision requires independent review. Every financial report is public to donors. Every medical family program is protected from developer influence. Every year on Lydia's birthday, we read the original Harbor Promise mission aloud at breakfast. Sophie rolls her eyes now because teenagers think ceremony is embarrassing until it is gone. She is 13 as I write this. Tall for her age. Sharp as a gull. Still too serious sometimes, but laughter is returning to her in pieces. She helps Maria in the kitchen and claims she is only doing it for access to frosting. She still does not like almond cake. I do not push. Some foods remember too much. Annabelle is not forgiven in the simple way people like to imagine. She is working. That is the word. Working. She attends counseling. She pays restitution. She volunteers at a community legal aid office sorting files for families in guardianship disputes. Iris arranged that, which was either rehabilitation or psychological warfare. With Iris, it is often both. The hardest conversation with Sophie came in winter. Not during the police interviews. Not during the first weeks when she woke from bad dreams and asked whether cake could be dangerous if Maria did not make it. It came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when sleet tapped the windows and the inn was nearly empty. She was doing homework at Lydia's old desk while I sorted invoices nearby. For 20 minutes, the room was peaceful. Pencils. Paper. The radiator knocking like an impatient tenant. Then Sophie looked up and asked, "Did I betray Mom?" I put the invoice down. Carefully. Some questions should not be answered with paper in your hand. No. But I told you. You told the truth. She cried because of me. She cried because of what she did and what Preston did. Sophie looked unconvinced. Children often accept blame because blame gives them a kind of control. If it is their fault, maybe they can fix it. If adults cause the damage, then the world is much less safe. I moved to the chair across from her. Bug, listen to me. When someone puts you in a position where telling the truth feels like betrayal, that means they put you in the wrong position. That wrongness belongs to the adult, not the child. She rubbed the corner of her worksheet. What if Mom thinks I picked you? Then your mom has more work to do. Do you think she does? Yes. Do you think I do? That one hurt. Yes, I said. But your work is not to fix her. Your work is to be 10. Then 11. Then 12. Your work is school, friends, books, being mad sometimes, laughing when you can, and telling safe adults when something feels wrong. She considered that. Being a kid sounds like a lot. It is. Adults forget because we are busy making it harder. She smiled a little. Then she went back to homework. I went back to invoices. But the room was different after that. A little clearer. A little more honest. Those are the repairs no headline covers. No one writes articles about a child learning that truth is not treason. They should. Because that is where the real damage either continues or stops. Spring returned slowly. The first crocuses came up near the west fence, where Lydia had planted them badly every year and blamed the squirrels when they appeared in strange places. Maria said the flowers had no discipline. I said they were creative. She told me not to romanticize incompetent bulbs. Life, rude and ordinary, kept coming back. We replaced the roof over the east wing with part of the recovered settlement. We added a quiet room for Harbor Promise parents who needed to sit somewhere without being asked if they were okay. We turned Preston's old office back into storage. That mattered more than I expected. The black desk went first. Then the glass shelves. Then the locked file cabinets. Under one cabinet, we found a yellow sticky note Lydia had written years earlier and lost somehow. Order more blue thread. That was all. 4 words from a normal day. Maria held it like scripture. She was always running out of blue thread, she said. I pinned the note inside the linen closet, above the place where the brass box had been hidden. Not everything preserved has to be dramatic. Sometimes a house heals through small true things returning to their proper place. The first time Annabelle came back without a court supervisor, she stood in the driveway for nearly 10 minutes before walking in. I watched from the porch but did not go to her. I had learned something by then. Helping too quickly can become another form of control. So I waited. She finally climbed the steps. I don't know how to enter, she said. Through the door usually works. She laughed. A small broken laugh. But real. Inside, she stopped at the dining room threshold. The same room. New flowers. Different season. No signature table. No gold pen. No Preston. Her face changed as memory crossed it. I see it every night, she said. The gala. Sophie stepping back. I said nothing. She looked at me. I used to think the worst part would be everyone knowing. It wasn't. The worst part was her knowing and being right. That was the first sentence from Annabelle that sounded like recovery and not reputation management. She asked if she could sit in the kitchen. Not the dining room. The kitchen. Maria was there making bread. The two women looked at each other for a long moment. Then Annabelle said, I am sorry. Maria kept kneading. For what part? Annabelle swallowed. Good question. Too big for a quick answer. For bringing danger into Lydia's kitchen, she said finally. For letting him touch food. For making Sophie afraid. For treating your loyalty like an obstacle. For all of it, but those first. Maria kept kneading another 10 seconds. Then she said, wash your hands. You can help with rolls. Annabelle cried into the sink. Maria pretended not to notice. That was mercy in its most practical form. Not forgiveness. Work. A place to put your hands while your soul catches up. Later that day, Annabelle asked to see Lydia's video again. This time Iris allowed it. I sat with her. We watched my wife speak across death with that clear blue sweater and tired eyes. When Lydia said, I love you enough to tell you no, Annabelle paused the video. I hated that will, she said. I know. I thought she trusted strangers more than me. She trusted structure more than appetite. Annabelle nodded slowly. My appetite or Preston's? Both, maybe. She accepted that too. Another sign. People truly changing do not need every sentence softened. At the end of the video, Annabelle whispered, I am sorry, Mom. The room did not answer. It did not need to. Apologies to the dead are not useless. They are practice for the living. By the next summer, the story had settled into town history. Not gone. Never gone. But absorbed. People stopped lowering their voices when I entered the hardware store. The newspaper stopped calling unless there was an actual update. Tourists began asking if this was the famous inn from the scandal, and Maria began telling them no, this was the famous inn from the pancakes. That answer became policy. We were not going to let Preston brand the house forever. Sophie turned 11 in the garden behind the kitchen. No almond cake. Blueberry pie. Her choice. Annabelle came. So did Iris, Nolan, Maria's entire Loud family, 2 Harbor Promise families from the first year, and a boy from Sophie's class who was clearly terrified of all adults present. At the end, Sophie stood on a chair and announced she had something to say. My heart stopped because children with announcements are either beautiful or catastrophic. Usually both. She held up a folded paper. This house had a bad year, she said. But Grandpa says houses can have scars and still be houses. So I think my birthday wish is that nobody lies with cake anymore. The garden went silent. Then Maria said, "Amen," so loudly the gulls lifted from the roof. Everyone laughed. Sophie laughed too. Annabelle cried, but not in a way that asked anyone to rescue her from the tears. That was progress. Small. Strange. Real. I tell you all of this because the revenge did not end with handcuffs or headlines. The deepest revenge was not that Preston went to prison. It was that he failed to make the house resemble him. He wanted secrecy. We made records public. He wanted pressure. We made safeguards. He wanted Sophie quiet. We taught her that truth spoken early can save people. He wanted Annabelle dependent. She began the slow work of standing alone. He wanted Lydia rewritten. We let Lydia speak for herself. He wanted me remembered as confused. I became the man who finally listened when the smallest person in the room told the truth. That is revenge with roots. It does not flash and disappear. It keeps growing after the villain stops watching. Sometimes Annabelle and I have coffee on the porch. Sometimes we talk about Lydia. Sometimes we talk about Sophie. Sometimes we sit in silence because silence is safer than forcing a bridge before the beams are ready. One day she asked me if I would ever trust her again. I told her the truth. Not the way I did before. She nodded like she expected that. Then I added, but maybe one day in a new way. She cried. So did I. We did not hug that day. 2 weeks later, we did. That is family after betrayal. Not one big scene. 100 small permissions. The question people ask me most, when they hear parts of this story, is whether exposing them publicly was revenge or justice. I used to answer justice because it sounds cleaner. Now I answer honestly. It was both. Justice was preserving the evidence, stopping the sale, protecting Sophie, and holding the criminals accountable. Revenge was choosing their stage. Revenge was letting Preston stand under Lydia's portrait, smile at the town, and sell himself as the practical man who was saving a confused old father. Revenge was waiting until the champagne had been poured, until the notary had opened the blue page, until Mariner Crown's people were already congratulating themselves, and then using their own screen to show the lab report, the hidden fee agreement, the doctor's payment, and the message where Preston called me easy. Revenge was watching the room understand before Preston could run. Revenge was turning the $750,000 deposit into free rooms for sick children through the Harbor Promise. Revenge was making his money feed the exact legacy he tried to bury. Revenge was the brass plaque that never names him but lets every guest sleep under the roof his greed accidentally protected. Revenge was making sure Harbor House did not merely survive his plan. It became harder to steal than ever. I do not apologize for that. Some betrayals should cost more than legal fees. They should cost reputation. They should cost control. They should cost the story the predator planned to tell about himself. Preston wanted to leave that room as the practical man who saved a sentimental old fool from himself. He left it as a defendant. That was not an accident. That was my signature. The signature he never got on the blue page. If you are still listening, I want you to understand something I learned too late. Family betrayal rarely begins with a shout. It begins with vocabulary. Concern. Support. Stability. Protection. Relief. Legacy. Evolution. All good words. All useful words. But in the wrong mouth, good words become curtains. They hide the hand moving toward your name on a document. They hide the money moving through a private account. They hide the child learning to whisper warnings into sugar packets. So watch the pattern. Not one strange comment. Not one missed appointment. The pattern. Who benefits when you feel confused? Who rushes you when you ask questions? Who calls your memory weak when your judgment threatens their plan? Who turns love into urgency? Who says trust me while hiding paper? Who uses children as messengers, shields, or pressure points? And if you find yourself in that kind of room, do not waste your first strength on confrontation. Document. Preserve. Call the person who is not impressed by your family's performance. Every family needs one Iris. Every house needs one Maria. Every lie fears one child brave enough to write 6 words where an old man will see them. I keep Sophie's sugar packet in the brass box now beside Lydia's letter. Sometimes I open it when I need to remember how close I came. The paper has gone soft at the folds. The words are still clear. Do not sign the blue page. People think the big moment was the gala. The screen. The police. The gasps. The public ruin. They are wrong. The big moment was a child deciding the truth mattered more than fear. Everything after that was just adults catching up. Harbor House still stands. The shutters are still blue. The porch still creaks in 6 places. The dining room floor still tilts near the piano, and I have no intention of fixing it because Lydia said imperfection is how a house proves it has been alive. Every summer, families come. Children run across the lawn. Parents sleep. Maria burns toast when she is angry and denies it every time. I sit on the porch in the evenings and watch the sea hit the rocks below with its old patient anger. Some nights I feel peace. Some nights I feel the wound. Most nights I feel both. That is enough. Because Harbor House was never saved by one perfect man. It was saved by a dead woman's foresight, an old friend's ruthlessness, a cook's suspicion, a lawyer's paperwork, a child's courage, and one father finally becoming less polite than the people trying to rob him. And if that is not a legacy, I do not know what is.